Welcome back, everybody, to this week's installment of creating a simple space shooter in Unity. I'm going to do the end first here and tell you to please leave a like if you feel so inclined, and if not, that's cool too. I'm also going to tell you that in the description, there's a link to the GitHub repository that gets updated with every single lesson. So you can go in there and look at the commits and see every week what's changing in the code. So if you just want to see the code, you can go ahead and do that. Today, this week, for this lesson, what we're going to look at is shooting. So we're going to enable shooting on our player. It's going to be a code-heavy lesson. Okay, so we're going to start out in our project. We're going to go into our scripts folder. We're going to right-click, create a C# script, and we're going to call it IShooterable. So what we're going to do here is create an interface. An interface is different from the classes that we've seen up till now. So what we're going to do is delete all the contents here, just leave this, and instead of class, we're going to say interface. And then the function we're going to put in here is public void shoot. And we can delete this top bit. So this is the entirety of the IShooterable file. Very simple. So what's an interface? An interface doesn't actually define how anything works. It's just think of it like a contract. So any class that implements the interface has to implement the functions that you put in the interface. So in this case, any class that I want to implement IShooterable has to implement this shoot function. So we want our player to implement IShooterable. So make it IShooterable here. You can see here it's telling us that there's something wrong, and that's because we have to, sort of by law, implement this interface that we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and say implement this interface. So it's public void shoot, and then it's just going to be an empty function right now. And so now we're going to talk about actually shooting. Okay, so what do we need to shoot? We're going to need a serialized field that's our bullet prefab, and we'll have our own bullet class eventually, but for right now we'll just use a game object since we haven't written that class yet. And we also want to take in a transform, which is our bullet spawn point. So this is the point from which the bullets are actually going to shoot out of our spaceship. Now we're going to start implementing an object pool. So we're going to write down all this code here. We need a bullet pool, a private IObject pool, which is our game objects, which we will change eventually to our bullets pool. We need to have a pool size specified here, so I have a constant integer for our pool size. We have our public bullet pool. Anytime you call the get on it, it's going to go through this code here. And if it hasn't been instantiated yet, it's going to go ahead and create that object pool at that point. And so we have to implement all these different functions. This create pooled item function, a function for what happens when you take from the pool, when you return to the pool, and when you destroy a pooled object. And then here we're saying we want to run checks on it, and how big is the pool going to be, essentially. And then we return that after we create it, if it hasn't been created yet. Otherwise, we just return it. Okay, so let's go through these various functions sort of one by one. So on destroyed pool object. So what should happen when a pool object gets destroyed? We're just going to call destroy on it. Back, like that. What happens for our function for what should happen when you return an object to the pool? So when an object goes to the pool, we don't want to necessarily destroy it. We just want to set it inactive. So we're going to set active false. When you set a game object as inactive in Unity, that's the equivalent of hitting this check button here. So you can see it just deactivates the entire game object. So that's what we want to happen to our bullets. When we take an item from the pool, we want to reactivate it, just like this. And there might be some more code here when we actually have a bullet class. And then finally, for creating a pooled item, we're just going to instantiate our bullet prefab and return the bullet that comes out, which in this case is just a game object. Again, that will change when we actually have a bullet class. So let's get down to the brass tacks of shooting. First of all, let's check for an input from the user. So say input, I can type get key, and we'll say key code dot, oh, you know what? Sorry, let's do get button, and we'll say fire. Probably a better way to do it. So here we're going to get our bullet pool and get a bullet from the bullet pool. Then we're going to set its position and its rotation to our bullet spawn point. And then we're going to have special bullet code for actually shooting. And that's what our shoot function is going to look like. So how do we and where do we call our shoot function? So let's go to our spaceship base class. So our spaceship base class has our fixed update, and so far we have some code for moving around and constraining our spaceship in the screen. We also want to now add code for taking care of shooting. So in our fixed update, we want to see if this game object has implemented the IShooterable interface. So we're going to say if gameobject dot get component IShooterable not equals to null, then gameobject.getComponent IShooterable shoot. We want to shoot if that's the case. So let's come back out, and we need to make a script for our bullet now. So let's make a, go to right click, create, C# script, bullet. Okay, here in our bullet class, it's going to need a few things to start with. Serialized field. We want a field for the speed of the projectile. And we'll probably want a field sound of the projectile when it gets shot. And field for the lifetime. So if you don't hit anything, we want the bullet to eventually sort of time itself out. Say 3 seconds, it should be off the screen by then. And then we want to have a timer equal to 0. And that's going to be what times out our life. We're going to make a public void shoot function here. Or let's distinguish it from our other shoot function. So we're going to say shoot bullet. So what this, we're also going to do private spool is active. Okay, so what shoot bullet's going to do is it's going to, that's what's going to be called to kind of set our bullet into motion. So we're going to say m is active equal to true. That's what happens when shoot bullet happens. We're going to say our m timer gets reset to 0. Our m bullet shoot sound gets played. Okay. In our private fixed update, we want to start moving our bullet around. If the bullet is active, then we'll increment our timer We want to check to see if the timer is greater than our bullet lifetime. It is. Oops. And we want to do a couple different things here. For one, let's say is active is equal to false. But one thing I missed here is we want to have private shootable and shooter. We want to know who shot us, because that's going to tell us who we return this bullet to, whose bullet pool that is needs to be returned to. And so our shoot bullet is going to take that in. And so we're going to set mShooter equal to who shot it and the shoot bullet. So whoever calls this has to pass that in, and then we'll know who shot the bullet. So then we're going to say mShooter return bullet, which means we need to come back to our IShooterable and implement a new function here. Public void return bullet. Which means we need bring this up so it sits with the shoot. So we're going to implement this function here. Return bullet. We're going to say bullet pool dot release bullet. Okay, so now we have a bullet class. We're going to change a lot of the game objects that we have here. So IObject pool is actually going to be a bullet pool. So we're going to change that. So everywhere we see game object for these pool functions, pool related functions, we're going to change to bullet. So return bullet.getComponent bullet. So on take from pool. Now we're going to do object dot shoot bullet. You pass it in this, and I think that should be all the changes we need to make to our player. Oops. There we go. Now we've fixed our shooterable. That should all compile. All right, let's go back to the bullet. Okay, so we say return bullet, and that should be what happens when the timer is greater than the bullet lifetime. Otherwise, we want to start moving our bullets. So transform.position plus equals transform forward times n bullet speed time delta time. So it's going to move our bullet forward at that speed as long as it's active. What's the other thing bullets need to do? They need to collide with things. So we'll use the collision function for private void on trigger enter collider other. So what this is saying is on trigger enter, do this, and what it gives us is who we collided with. So we're going to check if other game object name is not equal to mShooter.name, because we don't want to accidentally collide with our own spaceship. But the only thing is that IShooterable does not necessarily implement, does not necessarily have a name. Let's do this. Public Let's make a function here called getShooterName, public string getShooterName. We'll go ahead and implement this. Public string getShooterName. Print this dot name. So back here in bullet, we should be able to do that. Okay, so now we've made sure that when we collide with something, we're not going to collide with the thing that actually shot the bullet. So otherwise, we want to check if the other gameobject get component, we want to see if it's a spaceship. Why don't you know what a spaceship is? Oh, because not a capital S. Okay. So if it is a spaceship, then we want to do other gameobject component spaceship. We want to take damage and 100. And let's not do a magic number here. So let's have private. Let's make that serializable. Serialized field. Private int m bullet damage. We'll start with 100. I think back in spaceship, take damage should be public because our bullet has to tell the spaceship to take damage. Okay. So that's everything for our bullet code and everything for our interface code for shooting and everything for our player to actually do the shooting. So I say bullet pool.get. What happens when you on take from pool? We actually do the shooting. So let's actually do this. So on take from pool, we're setting active. We're also going to set the transformer in position in at this point when we take from the pool, and then we're going to shoot the bullet. So really, we just need bullet pool.get, and that should do everything we need it to do. All right, so I think we're good on the code. Now we need to do some work on the Unity end here. First of all, let's go up to our top level assets folder and right click, create folder. And we're going to create a prefabs folder. And we're going to create real quick here a bullet prefab. So up at the top, I'm going to go to gameobject, 3D object, sphere. And let's see if we can find that. There it is. If we go to our scene view, we want to click on our sphere and make sure we're looking at it. Let's put it at 0, 0, 0 just to make it easy for us. If you highlight something here, if you select something and then hit the F on the keyboard, it's going to snap the scene camera to it. So you want to find your sphere, click on it, and then hit F, and then it'll snap you to it. All right. So we have a sphere with a collider. Under the sphere collider, make sure isTrigger is checked. Now we want to add our bullet script to it. So there we go. So our bullet script takes in a shooting sound. So we're going to add a component here and type in audio source. So now we have an audio source. Uncheck play on awake because we don't want it to play on awake. We just want it to play when the bullet spawns. And now we need a sound. So in the first video, I told you to download a program called Audacity. Go ahead and create a sound in Audacity by recording it with your microphone right now, or finding a sound somewhere else, and come back when you're done. Okay, we're back, and we have our laser beam sound. I'm going to go ahead and drag that into the audio clip of this audio source component, and then I'm going to drag the audio source component into our bullet shoot sound of our bullet script component. And now that should all be set up. So I'm going to click on sphere. I'm going to go at the top and change the name of this game object to actually be bullet instead of sphere. So I'm going to go to our prefabs folder that we created earlier and then drag the bullet from over here in the hierarchy down into the prefabs. And now we have a bullet prefab. I guess while we're here, let's create a bullet material too. So here in our materials folder, I'm going to right click, create material. We'll call it bullet material. And we're just going to make this real simple. Under albedo, we're going to go something kind of light red, I guess. We'll make it nice and metallic, smooth. And under emission, we'll check that box and have it emit red. And have real-time global illumination. Okay, so now we have the material. We'll drag that onto our bullet to apply it to the bullet. Come back to our prefab, and we'll drag that bullet down onto the prefab again. And so now our bullet prefab has our nice candy apple red coating. So now we can delete it from our scene. Back over to our spaceship. You can see here we have a couple things we need to drag in. So under bullet prefab, which it looks like bullet prefab should be a bullet instead of game object. That's something I missed earlier. Okay. So yes, so now we're going to drag our bullet prefab from our prefab folder into this slot here. And then for spawn point, we're going to open up our player parent under the hierarchy, and we're going to right click on it and say create empty. We're going to call this empty game object bullet leave point. And you can see this is where the game object is right now. We're just going to move it kind of to the end of our spaceship. And now we're going to drag that bullet leave point into where it says bullet spawn point. We're also going to add a couple other components while we're here. We're going to hit add component, type in box collider. And hit this icon that says edit collider. And we're just going to drag these parts of the box so that it encompasses our spaceship. Okay, great. When you're done with that, we're going to hit add component and add a rigid body. And uncheck use gravity because it's space. And we'll leave everything else the same. So Control S to save, and now moment of truth. Let's try testing and by hitting play and see if we can shoot. Indeed, we can't. What's our problem? We have an argument input button fire is not set up. So let's go to File, Edit, Project Settings. Where is the input? Input Manager, Axes. Oh, okay, it's Fire 1, not Fire. My mistake. So back in our code, for shoot within our player class, we have Fire there, input get button. We're going to say input.get button Fire 1. Let's try again. So as you can see, when you click your left mouse button or use the control key, the bullets are now coming out, but they're coming out much too fast. So we need to do something to limit the rate at which these bullets get created. But it is kind of a neat effect and fun to do. but that's obviously not what we want for everything. Okay. First of all, let's just go to our bullet let's click on the prefab within the prefab folder and change the speed. It's quite slow. Let's go to 100 and we'll see how that feels in a second. Okay, back in the code for our player, we want to add a little timer. So we're going to go serialize field, private, float, time between shots. And then we're going to have a private float shot timer is equal to 0. So under shoot, underneath our if statement here, we're going to show shot timer is plus equals to time.delta time. Okay. Oh, actually, take that back. Keep that how it is. So under here where it says if get button fire 1 and shot timer is greater than time between shots, then we do bullet pool.get and what's going on here? And we make our shot timer 0. I think I have too many parentheses. Okay. And our time between shots will start off at 0.5, half a second. It's probably a good time, but we'll see how that feels in a second here. So back here on our player, you can see our time between shots. Let's put that at 0.5 and try it out and see how that feels. And as you can see, the shots have a nice little space between them. You can even hold down the key, control key, or hold down your mouse, and they're not going to spam out. And so that actually feels pretty good, and I think we will be okay going along with that. It's actually pretty fun. All right, and that will take care of shooting. So next week, or next time, I shouldn't say week, I'm going to try to do a little more of these per week. We're going to create our first enemy and be able to have you shoot it and blow it up and also be hit by it and blow up yourself. And yeah, all kinds of fun stuff. So if you've been following along, please leave a comment, let me know. If you have any questions, also let me know. Feel free to reach out. I will definitely help you out. Once again, you can look at all the code that we changed for this week's tutorial by going to the GitHub link, because I know it's going to be a little tough to follow along just in the video. Plus, I'm doing a lot of this just off the top of my head, so it's can be a little chaotic. But yeah, definitely use the GitHub, and that'll help you. And yeah, I'll see you next time. This is pretty fun. Thanks.